Hello friends. This talk is about imagining some more new things that Quakers could be using Zoom to do, or something quite like Zoom. I hope you'll get some new ideas and maybe it will ignite some sparks of new possibilities. I'm Jonathan Carmichael. I'm a Quaker from Watford Meeting in Hertfordshire in the east of England, and I'm Britain Yearly Meetings Simpler Meetings project manager. Let's just to start off, think about what you've been using Zoom for over the last months or year or so. Think about things maybe with friends or family, perhaps it's school or work or organising things, hobbies, learning. And take a moment to think about what you've been able to do online that you've never done before or was previously really hard to do and is now so much easier to do. Well, looking forwards, I don't think that the Zoom phenomenon is going to go away. So many people have experienced a revolution in how we can communicate and meet and talk and have fun and indeed worship together. So just for now, let's imagine that a lot of that stays. We needn't imagine, however, that everything will be done this way. There can be a mix. Some things in person, some things done online, some blended, some Quaker meetings doing more, some doing less, or none. We should face up to the fact, though, that some of our old ways worked well for some people, but weren't working well for others. Zoom has opened up some new ways to include people and enable more variety in how we do things. Of course, at the same time, we absolutely need to make sure that we find ways that include people who don't find Zoom works well for them, too. We need a balance. But going forward, there may be more fluid ways of us coming together as communities without some of the boundaries of geography or time or money, so that we can have Quaker communities with different kinds of shapes and different sorts of connections. Somebody said to me a few weeks ago, early Quakers were always looking for ways to connect more deeply, to connect with the divine and with each other. Sometimes they found that things they tried didn't work so well, and so they adapted. But they weren't going, let's just go back to how it's always been. They were moving forward, exploring, seeking, and that's the spirit of today. As we come through the pandemic, let's think of what good things we can take and use in our new future. Lots of us have a family who are far away. And we've begun meeting up with family online. And this has brought us closer together. Here's an image of our Quaker meeting, this time meeting in person, no screens. Along comes COVID-19. It just makes it impossible. So we started to meet for worship online. Perhaps a few to begin with, gradually more joining in. Well, before, when we were meeting only in person, some people were excluded. It might have been because of their health, or because of distance, or time, or money, things like that. And some people are now included more online than they were before. On the other hand, some others are now possibly excluded. Quite a lot of meetings are now using blended worship. So some people meeting physically together and others online in the same meeting for worship, where all can hear and see one another. And this can be really helpful in including people who aren't able to join online because they can come to the physical meeting space. And you could do that for an activity that isn't worship, but you're doing together. Some people, however, are unable to use computers, but now, as things begin to open up, we could go to help. We could go to their house with a laptop. We could enable them to join in online with things that they weren't able to join in with before, perhaps before they feel able to come into something physically. So the blended setting can include people who can come physically and include people who can come online. Some meetings have been providing an online device to enable the person to be included. I wonder what other ways we can think of where we could include people either in person or online. And it can help if we try not to think of blended meetings like this, with a wall of faces with screens and a group of people who are sitting looking at that wall. That doesn't have to be how it is. We can think of it much more as a circle, just imagining ourselves sitting together, all equally placed. We could use this kind of blended setting for a speaker to join with us, some people in person, some people online. The speaker can be many, many miles away. Or the speaker could use we could use the same technology for the speaker to join a physical meeting from afar. You could watch a video together and then discuss it. Some people again could be online, some people could be physically in the same place. We can have social times together online. My meeting's done that, and have a lot of enjoyable time. Again, it can bridge the distances, and it can also help people to get used to this form of getting together. Quite a lot of meetings are now using breakout rooms for socializing and for discussion, where different groups are meeting in different online spaces. And now it's possible for you to move around. If the settings are set up like this, you can move around choosing a particular breakout room. You can also now see who's there. So it opens up lots of possibilities for saying, find people that you want to be talking with. You can move around a bit, perhaps more like we used to in after meeting for worship, when you'd move around in the worship space. On the other hand, doing things in breakout rooms online, whilst other people are physically in a meeting space, can produce a risk of separation, of two sets of conversations going on, that the people, particularly the people who are physically together, can't join in with. So one of the things that you might think about is if you could use several physical rooms to join with the people who are online. So all that would mean is that you'd use, some people would stay in where they are in the main room, and people could go to two other rooms in this example, perhaps with a device each, and use the breakout spaces to join with people in the online space as well as physically. You can bridge that gap and avoid there being a separation within the community. We've also been using Zoom to see one another for some listening, for pastoral care, for more one-to-one support. And I hope we will imagine using that in the future. Even if we are able to meet in person, we can still use this tool. There are going to be lots of opportunities for outreach, for welcoming newcomers, and we may need to think a bit carefully about what are we doing to welcome the newcomers who have joined us in this phase when we've been online, and what do we need to do to welcome people who come to us for the first time in person as well. And let's think for a little while about the children and young people in our communities. Typically we might be doing things like this. We might have the adults in one space and the children and young people in another. Well, there's lots of scope for doing things online and in the future. Often we might have some isolated children and young people in different meetings dotted around in our area. And we might have a little congregation, a little grouping of them in one meeting. Well, can we, as some meetings are already doing, develop a children's meeting that works beyond one local meeting, so it's able to include those other children and young people who are in other meetings? We could be connecting our young people across several meetings. There are larger youth events happening. There are ones across the whole country now on a regular basis or on a regional basis. There are weekend events taking place where people can join for 2 or 3 hours on a Friday and a Saturday and Sunday and replicate some of the in-person events. And that may enable some people to join in who wouldn't have been able to go for a whole weekend. And some area meetings have pooled their children and young people's activities and are now having area groups for different ages of children, hence the 3 different sizes in this image. And people have also been taking the opportunity to meet up as families or groups of parents, which is a whole extra dimension. Some meetings are now holding blended children's meetings, so some in the meeting space in a room beside, probably beside where the adults are, and others joining them online. We can do that for the future as we go forwards. A wholly different aspect is our ability to meet at different times and different days. I think through this pandemic, there's been a real growth in online meeting for worship that takes place at different times instead of always the Sunday morning, Sunday evenings, Mondays in the morning, in the evening, for different periods of time, short epilogues for 15 minutes, 20 minutes, that kind of thing. It allows us to break out of some of the boundaries that we put around ourselves. Here is 2 local meetings, and they're happily meeting on their own, each separately. Well, they could meet together. They could do things together. You could have a speaker. You could do some learning, some discussion together. You could have them blended in several different locations. So here the people on the orange are in one place, the people in blue are in another, and others are joining them online. And there's a speaker from far away in this picture in green. We're able to have big numbers of people brought together without the travelling time that it normally takes or the expense. So last November we had a Britain Yearly meeting with about 1,000 people joined together for some worship and some business, and we'll be doing that again this summer in 2021 for our Yearly meeting gathering. There's lots of opportunities for conferences, for developing different ways of getting together with people. And that also works internationally. It's been a great flowering of connections of Quakers across international continents. And just within Britain, lots of opportunities to cross boundaries for connecting with groups of role holders in different parts of the country. And people with particular interests can get together now in ways that we couldn't before. And people who want to be putting their faith into action, able to meet with one another. I hope this will give you some ideas and that you can just imagine things that you can do. Things that you can be dreaming about and begin to put into practice for your own Quaker meeting and across the wider Quaker community. Thank you, friends.